Dude, my girl Shinobu, dude, that was GOAT. That ending illustration is GOAT. See my best girl, you know, straight feed mode, surrounded by the donuts. That's straight up wallpaper. That shit is amazing. Last week's was cool, but this one, this is amazing, dude. I don't care what anybody says. This is GOAT. Okay, and I hope you guys are catching that ending illustrations, because if you're not catching these ending inserts, you're fucking up. You're doing something wrong. You need to go back and view every single one of them. Save those shits ASAP. That's all I can say. But anyway, I digress. So, Owarimonogatari, Episode 3. Bear with me. Everybody said they wanted in-depth. I'm going in-depth. I don't know how long this video is going to be. And Nisio-sensei is going in on all fronts. Shaft is going in on all fronts. A three-prong attack right now as far as expanding and, you know, filling in the pieces of the puzzle as far as the mystery and the riddle surrounding Sodachi's past and Araragi's youth is concerned, dude. That on top of the incredibly strong character development that Araragi has seen in the last 3 episodes alone, dude. Just how exponential it is. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. The insight that we're getting into his mentality, into his resolve, into his mindset, and everything that he stands for at this stage. And then I can't turn a blind eye to, you know, the subtleties and the oddities surrounding Ougi. I spent all of last week's episode talking about the Ougi X Araragi theories and the link between them. If you have not seen last week's review, and potentially you should watch all of my Monogatari videos starting from Monogatari episode 4 review, because there's a lot of theory crafting going on for Ougi, and I'm going to refer to it a lot, but basically the gist of it, and if you can't see it, I can't help you, I firmly believe this at this stage, is that Ougi is in fact a Kai forged from Araragi's subconscious, an apparition forged from Araragi's subconscious, and there is a link between the two of them. Imagine how crazy it would be if it's revealed that the entire time, even this scene where they're in you know, Sodachi's broken down mansion, Araragi was speaking entirely to himself, and Ougi just never even existed. But her being an apparition forged out of him in and of itself, and I've been wondering this, you know, since last week, how far does her individual will go? How much is it influenced by Araragi's subconscious? And what is her endgame? And can she, you know, go off of that? Because she says the dialogue from Ougi this episode, as well as what Shaft is doing in the direction, the cinematography, and certain visual cues, dude, which the visuals, as always, fucking stunning in this episode. But what they're doing here, dude, I can't turn a blind eye to it, and I need to get into all of it. So I'm gonna put that on the back burner for now, but before I do, there are 3 things that I want to say about it as far as Ougi's concerned, and that before I start diving into everything like that. The first thing, dude, the very first thing, she says it again. I don't know anything. It's what you know, Araragi-senpai. She says it again, alright? Dude, that shit is it. And then on top of that, and remember last episode when they first approached Sodachi's mansion, this is what Ougi said. It reminds you of my uncle's cram school, doesn't it? She put the thought on Araragi, and she's the one that referenced it at first, okay? She said, does it give you the same vibe? And then in this episode, she's like, you're the one that said that this place was, you know, ruined and run down to the same amount. I'm like, no, you said that shit, okay? And ultimately, when you look at it via the theory that I've crafted, it makes perfect sense. But anyway, those are the things I need to throw out there. And the last thing, dude, which that line was incredible. I need to find it. I wrote it down for a second. When Araragi says, basically, that as happy as I am, I've come to despise myself a little bit after Ougi prompts him and asks him, you know, how does he genuinely love his life at this stage, and how much of it is a result of the result that was imbued in him after Sodachi instilled this love for mathematics in him. But anyway, we'll get there right now. But the point is, right after he says that, I've come to despise myself a little bit, Ougi says these words, then that little bit is how much I will love you. The depth and what that means. We're gonna get back there, but I just had to point this out before we actually dive into it. And then there's one big thing in terms of the visual cues and the cinematography of this episode, and Ougi is concerned, you know, with the traffic lights and the symbolism, taking it back. If you guys, you know, long-time Monogatari fans, remembering back to 2nd season, the very first instance in Mayo Zhangxi where Ougi showed up, which, like I theory crafted last week, based on the timeline, and this being her formal introduction to Araragi, yet that having occurred chronologically before these events, makes her appearance, and nobody questioning her appearance, granted Araragi was the only one that saw her back then, is insane. It's absolutely insane, dude, and solidifies for me the fact that she is was created from Araragi's subconscious, dude. The very fact, even Hanakawa, first of all, Kaiki said, I said this last week, Kaiki said Ougi has no relatives. We all know that the whole Ougi Oshino thing is bullshit. We still don't know the insight into her endgame and how much of it is actually influenced by the link to Araragi's subconscious from my perspective. But even Hanakawa, this episode, as soon as Araragi mentions him, not even the fact that she poked a hole in Ougi's theory, which Ougi, he purposely has that hole in, and it also speaks to the fact that she was so keen in gaining that knowledge that Araragi's parents were police officers. And then on top of that, she's manipulating everything. Dude, you saw her with the fucking, dude, that hypnotism sequence where she just had the claw as soon as Araragi finishes the backstory and she's waving it in front of his eyes, dude. Oh my goodness, dude, I can't get away from talking about Ougi, dude. That's what Owari is, his final boss Ougi right now, but I want to dive into the Sodachi stuff and the young Araragi stuff. So let's start there and then work our way back to all this stuff that I want to talk about as far as Ougi is concerned. And you stick around, I guarantee you it's going to be in depth as far as the analysis of the traffic lights is concerned in that dialogue, because there's so much to glean about Ougi's endgame via the subtleties of this episode. But anyway, I love the introduction of the episode and gleaning, getting that insight into young Araragi, dude. And see, he's fucking do it. And did anybody else think of that scene, during Shinobu time where Shinobu saw young Araragi and she was like, oh my god, like, he's adorable, can I go over there and attack him right now? I was like, oh my god, my girl, like, but listen, that's how it was, dude. They had that fucking little James Bond type sequence at the beginning. I was like, yo, Shax is playing games right now. Shax is playing games with mine, but I love the classic Niso dialogue and that ending line as well, before I forget about it, where he's talking about how, whether Sodachi would be there or not is an impossible proof. And we're about to go into the Sodachi Lost arc, and I think that has heavily to do with finally fleshing out the backstory and fleshing out where Araragi changed in his past, why his memories evade him to this point, because it's ridiculous that he didn't remember Sodachi's face. It's absolutely insane unless it's locked away for some reason or another. We've known, and it's been a thread throughout Monogatari, that Araragi's memory is not the best ever since the inception in Bakemono, where he didn't even remember Nadeko. So we're gonna have to see where those intricacies lie, but I digress. The dialogue where he describes his younger self, and he's like, straightforward, pure, earnest, what you would call a normal child. And then he talks about the influence, and it's almost the trauma that Ougi kind of referenced last episode that, imbued Araragi with his sense of righteousness and justice that we see in the Fire Sisters as well, coming from their parents and their strong sense of justice as police officers. And that was the moment that it was imbued into him. To see how he took it so strongly to the point where when he did poorly in mathematics, he was like, I couldn't fulfill the just cause of learning. It's insane, dude. That's not normal. And that also leads into, even though Araragi claims that he's lost his righteousness at this point, his obscene self-sacrifice and his strong sense of justice still remains underlying and there. And as a result of what it's tied to, I don't know. But let's move forward, right? Young Araragi took a position that sought justice from then on. From the inception, after the summer spent with Sodachi and his love for mathematics growing, that was his mode. That was his move 100%, right? Sodachi taught me how amusing this world was and made him essentially into the person he was today, which the piece is starting to come into place, from what Sodachi was raving about last week. I hate the sun that thinks it rose on its own, the water that thinks it's boiled itself. I hate you because you have forgotten your roots entirely. And ultimately, what she means deep down is you've forgotten about me and everything. And I don't know. I'm not gonna wholeheartedly buy, Ougi's bait, hook, line, sinker like that, because it could be so much deeper than that. And whatever Ougi's endgame is and how is she trying to manipulate Araragi's perception and once again breaking the fourth wall, going back to what Tadachi was talked about, the fourth wall presence and the one who's observing and who is ultimately the final boss, like Yotsuki said, which is fucking Ougi, and we've already gotten there. But the point is, dude, when she says, let's take an outside perspective in analyzing this, yet again, breaking the fourth wall, confirming these things, dude. But to see that link between Sodachi and Araragi, and finding out about, you know, this summer that they spent together before she left, the obvious family problems with the broken home and everything. I kind of felt that it was going that route since that one frame that we got last week, because I looked at the light novel illustration long before this, and I saw, you know, if you look at it closely, I'm just gonna have to leave a link to it somewhere, but if you look at it closely, you can see the strife in the you know, Sodachi household and everything like that. She's holding what seems to be a blade and everything, cloaked in darkness, and to see that, and I still can't wait to find out exactly what happened as far as Sodachi's parents and everything that transpired. But to see that, and to see how she almost clearly had feelings for her, and I think it goes that deep, and probably the bond between them and the fact of the beauty and Yura's identity, which ultimately plays off of Ougi. There's so many things that just go in so many directions. That's ultimately what the beauty of why Niseo Ougi is my favorite light novel author of all time, dude. The man is a genius. He's an absolute monster on every level, okay? But aside from that, dude, just learning about this, I can't wait to dive into the Sodachi Lost Ark and see exactly what's transpired. Have Araragi open these other doors, and I love the running theme of, you know, how big of a fool is Koyomi Araragi, dude, because it ultimately plays off of the instance and how Ougi perceives Araragi, which is ultimately, you know, it's a kind of weird circle if you buy this theory, because then Ougi, as an apparition spawned by Aragi's subconscious, these are ultimately his internalized thoughts coming to the surface as Ougi. But it could go in that way. It could be completely different. Ougi could have a complete mind of her own, even if as an apparition she was spawned from Araragi in that way. And clearly she has her own endgame. To what end, I still can't put my finger on. But let's dive into that. Let's dive into that. Let's dive into the Ougi theory crafting. First of all, the visuals this episode. From the early portions, seeing that room that they studied in, you know, the globe, the diagram of the universe and everything like that, you see it spinning as Araragi, you know, weaves the tale, and it kind of almost symbolizes to me personally, and it could be a bit of a stretch, but it kind of symbolizes to me personally how Araragi's world worked at that time, and how his entire consciousness orbited around this ideal of justice, and Sodachi opened that up, ultimately rerouting itself to the point where it reaffirmed his resolve even further, which ultimately was broken down 2 years ago when the events transpired with Sodachi as well, and she left school and everything like that, was blamed for the cheating. But that I thought that was really cool to have set up like that, and I wonder if there's even more that we can glean from that. But that aside, the visuals that were heavy this episode for me personally, one that was utterly beautiful is when Ougi's looking through the kaleidoscope and you see Sodachi kind of twisting in the colors and subverting in the color spectrum and everything like that. And the use of color this episode is the biggest thing. But I thought that was awesome. And then the clocks and the metronomes. From the hypnotism that Ougi was conducting, that little motion that she was conducting, to when they transport to that kind of space and the dialogue continues, you see the faceless clock on the wall, the numerous metronomes ticking and everything like that, and the use of color from the blue and red offset color palettes that they were using for Araragi and Ougi at the latter half, to the stark red and green contrast, and the use of the traffic lights yet again, which, dude, we're gonna have to get into it right now. The use of the traffic lights, that's probably the biggest thing, right? Because first of all, it's one of the same images that was used back in Myoji, where they had their first meeting, the first time we saw Ougi, and they discussed the traffic lights, right? I think that in and of itself, on surface level, that one shot, you know, serves to kind of exemplify various directions, divergent paths in life and everything like that, and kind of mirrors the exact situation between Araragi and Sodachi as far as, you know, one stoplight kind of mirrors Araragi's questioning and the volatile resolve that he had, and then the stoplight turns from red to green, kind of symbolizing how he partitioned it, moved forward, and, you know, is probably a hint as to his memories being sealed away and everything like that, right? But then the biggest thing that it does, aside from the regular kind of insight into color theory and everything like that, you know, green being a symbol of, you know, warmth, hope, and everything like that, of healing and things like that, where red, you know, kind of symbolizes danger, blood, death, and anger and everything like that. Like, it's deep, and it was crazy to me that they used the red heavily, and they've used it throughout Owari up to this point, but heavily in this episode as far as Araragi was concerned, and for Ougi, they used the green, and it was backlit on her silhouette, and it instantly reminded me of the traffic light combo, seeing the use of these colors and seeing that, right? And so, of course, after the episode ended, and I still haven't got my rewatch of this episode in, mind you, and these episode reviews could be even more in depth if I got a rewatch in before, because every Monogatari series I've seen up to, you know, I would say Hanamono, Tsukimono are the only two I've only seen twice. All of second season, Nekomono, Bakemono, you know, I've seen over 5 times. So rewatches, you'll always find something new to latch onto with Monogatari, and I urge you, if you're struggling to understand anything, rewatch it. Fucking rewatch it. But anyway, I digress. Instantly, I had to go back at the end of this episode and get back into that dialogue and refresh my memory. And I'm kind of upset that I didn't pull out my BD and put it in, because I wanted to see the official translation that was used. But I just looked it up online, and the dialogue was still quite good. The subtitles were still quite good. So I'm going to quote those, even though it's probably slightly off and slightly more refined in the actual BDs. But let's dive into what Ougi says back in that conversation. First of all, the 3-second interval. And I think that heavily plays off, because she talks about in that first conversation the interval between the switch between traffic lights with the red and green light and everything like that being approximately 3 seconds, playing into this concept of time, you know, the time that Araragi is lost, the time that is symbolized by the clocks and the metronomes and everything like that in this episode, and the 3 seconds potentially being also, I want to leave that for a second, but the 3 seconds are important. I need to leave this for a second, also because something just came to me, but Araragi says that the person that he was created at that time, after his kind of sense of justice and his resolve was fortified through the love of mathematics that Sodachi gave him. Now, it's interesting to me if you think about it as a time interval, and what Ougi said last episode of being born very recently, and this kind of gap between the red and green light, that in this lost time, that we still haven't filled in the entirety of Araragi's memories and everything that's transpired, and even the shift between the loss of his righteousness and the events of Cinematography and the more rebellious Koyomi that we've come to know in the inception of Bakemono and everything like that, versus, and yes, his strong sense of justice still pervades him on the base level and drives him, but ultimately, outwardly, the person that he expresses himself, and why he clashes with his sister so much at this point, is because he's trying to focus the rebellion, and it forces to be believed that in this time frame that is kind of lost and that we have no insight into was the birth of Ougi. Okay, so I wonder if I'm reading too much into that 3-second time interval, but I think it kind of ties in some way, and I need to get the rewatch. I'm probably gonna have to rewatch the entire series again, which is gonna be crazy, seeing as how I've seen it so many times. But I'm probably gonna have to do it again after this core of Owari ends, just to get everything together. But ultimately, let's dive into what Ougi says during the traffic light combo. These are the only lines I excerpted because these are what are most important for me. The world is at its safest when it's filled with red lights that denote danger, and the oxymoron, the paradox in these lines. The world is at its most dangerous when it's filled with green signals that denote safety. Basically, and that's the thing too. Think about the paradox. Think about, the fact that the green light was flashed on Ougi, kind of signaling this danger that she's talking about, versus the safety that is found in the red light, kind of reflected on Araragi and everything like that. And Ougi goes on to talk about, child soldiers and everything like that, and their perception of life, and how they have a firmer head on their shoulders because they see everything they see in life is red lights, the caution that's there. And this is where we start to get into Ougi's endgame. It was Nisio, base Nisio, foreshadowing it from the jump, from the very first time we saw her, suddenly thinking that the whole dialogue, even though it had its depth to it, and ultimately we didn't care about Ougi back then. We were completely linking it to Mayoi, we were completely linking it to Araragi, we were completely linking it to the kind of psychological and philosophical inquiries that take place in Monogatari to begin with. But if you look at it on this level, dude, and this kind of paradox is crazy to me. That's exactly why someone needs to bring these things up. Because Araragi says, but even if you adhere to the safety of the red lights, even if you do, and you avoid, because Ougi said you have to avoid, cross sections, intersections altogether if you want to truly be safe. And Araragi says, even if you do that though, there's always random chance. There's happenstance. What if a drunk driver swerves into the sidewalk and hits you? And Ougi says this. That's exactly why someone needs to bring these things up. Someone like me, perhaps. People need to be reminded of how dangerous this world is. Ougi's endgame, entirely wrapped into that, and to what end, and to what goal, and to what she's actually physically trying to enact, and how she's trying to manipulate Araragi, and what her existence truly means, and where she's trying to. It is too early to say. Light novel readers, I swear to God, if you spoil me, I swear, because I've held out this long. I could have spoiled myself a long time ago, because I've read the light novel, all of the translations that I could have got my hands on. I've read a good majority of Monogatari. So, I am a huge Monogatari fanboy, in case you guys didn't fucking know. But I don't want to be spoiled at this point. I could have spoiled myself a long time ago. If my theories are right, wrong, I don't care, don't confirm, don't say anything, but I think that this is the biggest hint into Ougi's endgame. The subtleties that Nisio is weaving in, that Shaft is weaving in specifically with the cinematography and with the visuals, knowing that they know what the endgame is and what transpires, is amazing to me. It's absolutely crazy to see that this was foreshadowed so long ago, and that the subtleties in Sodachi, Riddle right now are harkening back to it. It's exactly why someone needs to bring these things up. Someone like me, perhaps. People need to be reminded of how dangerous this world is. And then she goes on to talk about the drunken notions of hope and everything like that. And like, so are these, and thinking about the link between Ougi and Araragi, is this Ougi born out of the kind of antithesis of what Araragi is in and of himself? Is this, what is buried deep down in his subconscious, and what kind of plays off of his sense of justice and what he's been trying to combat this whole time and suppress? Is it 100% Ougi and her endgame? Is it, if my theories aren't even right, regardless of that, if there is no link between Araragi and Ougi, which it's bullshit. There's no way that there's not. From the fact that he's like, I don't know anything. It's you that knows Araragi. The fact that she's bringing up stuff, like I just watched last week's review in order to get the insight. I'm only going to be pointing out new signs and new cues and new markers and new little subtleties at this stage. But this episode, we got the very fact that she's like, you said that the ruins are just as the ruins of this house are just as run down as the cram school ruins. No, he didn't. You said that, Ougi. You fucking said that. You slippery. The fact that Araragi, everything that she's done since, the very beginning in Ougi formula. Not in the very, I mean the very beginning of Owarimonogatari, but in Ougi formula and everything like that, dude, it's undeniable at this point. And then that line, shaping into it where he's like, I've come to despise myself a little bit. And she says, then that little bit is how much I will love you, dude. Which, it seems everything is double-edged with Ougi almost to a point, and that's almost playing back into what the words Araragi said about Ougi in Ougi formula, where she's comparing her to Euler's identity, and that everything in the face of Ougi equals zero, and that she's everything and nothing at once, final boss, god status, and ultimately at the same time just him, just the individual, just the core, which is insane to me. But it's double-edged right there, because yes, she's saying she'll love him. She's always calling him a fool regardless. There's so much going on that I can't even touch it all at once. But regardless of that, that little bit though kind of shows an undeniable disregard for Araragi, dude, which is insane to me, right? And yeah, that's pretty much everything that I need to talk about as far as traffic light conversation is, and the symbolism with the clocks, the metronome, the hypnotism, the fucking red and green color palettes, the blue and red color palettes, which I don't want to read into the blue, color theory and everything like that and try and take it too far, because once again, it could just ultimately boil down to be the crazy Shaft aesthetic that we know and loved as far as Monogatari is concerned. But this episode, dude, the depth, the subtleties, I can't turn a blind eye to Ougi stuff. I just can't. Like, I want to focus all my attention on kind of potentially theory crafting as to what transpired between Sodachi and Araragi, but I can't put my finger on it 100%. And even though the pieces of the puzzle are starting to fall into place, and these are the kind of surface level progressions and mysteries that take place in every arc of Monogatari that you really can't predict, and the subtleties exist aside from that. So, as far as Sodachi is concerned, what's going to happen next? It's an impossible proof. As Araragi says himself, dude, I have no idea. I can't tell you. I need to rewatch these two episodes of, Sodachi Riddle in order to get full insight into everything. And potentially, I wish there was a translation, because I need to read this at some point. I really do, whether I have to learn, and my Japanese skills have to get to that point where I can actually read it in actual Japanese language, but I need to read these volumes at some point, because it's crazy. But I don't want to spoil myself now. I don't want to know what happens. Don't tell me shit. Let's fucking go, dude. So, this episode, amazing yet again. I mean, it's that GOAT Monogatari, dude. This is one of my top 10 favorite series of all time. Okay, of course I'm gonna love every single episode. Of course I'm gonna fanboy. And that ending insert was beast. Getting to see Yosuke even for a brief second, dude, just popping in there when Ougi's like, yo, the math fairy, and you see her with Euler's equation just on her, splatter on her face, and she's striking the pose. I'm just like, yo, Yosuke, man, this fucking fans are too real right now. But ultimately, the depth and subtleties around Ougi are what are just captivating my mind with Owari right now. That's it. That's it. And that's what I've been waiting for. But I kind of want to see something that, like last week, at least I got base Gahara-san, my goddess, to literally slap some sense, to knock some sense into me and make me forget about Ougi for at least a brief second punching Sodachi. But I need the material at the forefront to kind of just captivate my mind away and take me away from this Ougi stuff just a little bit, because I don't want Ougi to be the focus of every single Owari review. But anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about, you know, the kind of ties that I'm making with the traffic scene sequence and everything like that. And that's pretty much it. Let me know your thoughts, and I'm out. Peace.